Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar, the first one for 2016. The Three Principles Global Community, or known as 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today, we are very lucky to have Kara Stamback, MS, with us. Kara has always had a passion for helping people. And growing up with George and Linda Pransky, her parents, two of the original teachers of the principles, her early exposure to the principles gave her the vehicle to do that. After earning her graduate degree in psychology, she began her career with Pransky and Associates, an internationally known organization which has pioneered the teaching of the principles in business with individuals, couples, families, and professionals. In her 20-year tenure at Pransky and Associates, Kara has held nearly every role in the organization and is now a partner. Kara's current passion is designing virtual offerings. She and her sister, Erica Bugby, bring an unwavering inspiration and enthusiasm in creating an entire web-based virtual division of Pransky and Associates to spread the learning that has changed their own lives and the lives of their families and clients. And I've seen a couple, and they're fabulous. When Kara's not working, she's enjoying spending time with her husband and 3 children and going to the movies. So Kara, thank you so much for being here today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction, Bonnie. I always think it's funny listening to people talk about you. I always sound so different to myself when I'm, hearing somebody talk about me. Like, wow, I'm really doing something important here. I kind of forgot that. Actually, we're all doing something important here. It's I always think it's so cool that what these principles are doing, and that so many people end up listening to these calls and are interested in this, and the list grows, every single day. So good for us for doing this work. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love this community. I love what 3PGC is doing, and I love to have an engaged group of people, hopefully an engaged group of people. I know we've had some technical problems this morning, but I hope people find us and are able to join us and listen live, or maybe listen to the recording. If you're listening live, and I'll say this again a little bit later too, love to have your questions. I would love for this to be a dynamic, kind of conversation and dialogue. The topic for today is just about change and about what I've learned for myself about change, because I've had some insights about that over the last year or so. And, if I'm going to be sharing my personal stories, let's hear some of yours as well. So I'll talk for a little bit and tell you a little bit about what I'm seeing and how that makes sense to me and what I've been helping my clients to see. And then if you have a question, feel free to post it anytime. It won't be disruptive. If you don't want to, if you think you might forget, you can just type it in, and then I will stop, pause, and answer it as soon as I have a little bit of a break. Okay, so let me tell you what happened. So as the introduction suggests, I've been learning about the principles pretty much for as long as I can remember. And because I've also been teaching the principles for pretty much as long as I can remember, almost, they've really been helping me. And I've kind of, actively and passively been incorporating them into my life for a really long time. And it's really helped me, as the description to this talk said, it really has helped me to find a sense of contentment about myself, about my life. As I've gotten uneasy or felt like things are wrong or things need to be fixed, and when I get intense about that, the principles have really helped me to kind of calm down, and I found a really nice sense of contentedness in my life. Not every single moment, but in a lot of ways, and I love that about the principles. But what I realized in the last, about a year or two ago, what happened is I got really focused on my work and really absorbed in my work, and was spending time with my family, but wasn't really kind of on top of things in my family as much as I could have been, because you're always making choices in your life. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, I've gotten lost. Everything's kind of out of control. My kids are really running my household, and I'm not really on top of things the way that I would like to be. And I had the most interesting experience of having a flood of thinking in the form of inspiration where I was like, oh my gosh, I want so much more for what for my life, in little ways. I'll tell you a little bit about what I mean in a minute. I want so much more. I know I can do it. I know it should be done. And but it was a tall order. It was a lot of things. Like one example that I'll use, I was thinking I would use throughout this webinar is I realized, we have a really nice family life. I have great kids. They're really nice people, but we have no real system where they help around the house. They pretty much just make messes all the time and really never clean them up. And we're constantly cleaning them up, and we're in over our heads, and the messes are getting bigger, and they're helping less. And so that and a bunch of other things, I realized all at once, I want to make all these changes. I want to make changes in my household. And it was so interesting because it came in a flood of inspiration and clarity, and I know this is the right thing to do. And every time I looked, I could see it would be better for them. It would be better for me. It would be better for, the state of the house and the value of the property. I mean, everything looked like a good idea. It was just so, so, so clear. And it also came with an unbelievable flood of ideas of how to do it. We can do, Saturday morning jobs, and we should be, watching these videos that are talking about that. And I should be having them talk to their friends that do jobs. And I had all of these ideas about how to do it. And it was so interesting because, like I said, with an understanding of the principles, I hadn't done a lot of kind of active figuring out of things. I just kind of, I would have ideas and inspirations. They would come together. I would see them through. But somehow, I don't know if it was because I was backlogged on my personal life, but I was just overwhelmed with these two sources of kind of inspiration and feeling like I got to make some changes, which came with, some degree of, of pressure and of need and of, this has to be done. And then a flood of ideas and strategies and ways of thinking about it. And it was so funny because it overwhelmed me. I liked it. I knew it was right for me, but I was overwhelmed by it because I was a little conflicted by, do I heed the kind of the need and the pressure that's coming from this, sense of bigger voice of, you should make these changes, Kara, you should make these changes. Do I heed that? Is that my wisdom? And what about all these ideas and strategies and ways of going about it that were coming to me? Is that my intellect? Is that my ego? I would get all onto it. So we started this checklist. Plan where I made these checklists for the kids, and I thought through everything that we should be doing, and I put them all down, and I put them on, laminated them, and I got, the markers for them to do it. And we got up extra early in the morning, and my husband would be like, this is too much, and, it's too much for the kids. And I was like, well, is this my ego? Is this my intellect? So I don't know. It was just so much that I got a little bit overwhelmed and conflicted. And I think that happens for people when we get a burst of inspiration and clarity to make a change. It's hard to know how to mediate the power of that feeling and the fact that that has to come through our minds in some way. That has to come through via strategy and plans and a way to do it, kind of an intellectual structure of how to do it. And what I found is I was often caught between kind of lofty ideals, lofty inspiration of, I want to be different, and caught in the minutia of, it's all about how you do it, and have to do it this way. And if this checklist doesn't work out, I just don't know what we're going to do. And this is, the only way that I can get from my lofty ideals to have it actually happen in the world. And I just found myself caught back and forth in that. And when I thought about my clients, I realized that's a really common thing, because people want to change. People want to change. And you look, this is the first webinar of the year. In January, everybody's hearing about goals and resolutions and what do you want to do differently with your life, and make sure you stick to it, and, keep your resolutions, and people don't do it, and here's why, and watch this webinar. And, so I know that it matters to people making changes. I know that it's a common thing for that to happen. And I can see in my clients the propensity to kind of get stuck in the lofty ideals without thinking too much about how to do it, because when you think too much about how to do it, you can lose the inspiration, you can lose the feeling of it, and get lost kind of in the minutia of it. And then the other place that people get stuck is, the lofty ideal phase comes first, and then the second phase is you just got to get in there and do it, and you got to spend your time figuring it out. And you really can get lost in that, and you can lose touch with the inspiration of it. So I was so surprised to find myself after all of these years kind of caught in between those things, because they were both so strong in me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what I've learned about that, and excuse me, and see if it resonated with any of you guys. Because what I realized is that it's so, let's see how to say this. I mean, ideally, we flip back and forth between lofty ideals and concrete plans and strategies for how to do something. But if we kind of park ourselves in one of those camps, it's not going to work out very well. So my client, I saw a young adult, he's 25, and he didn't really get started after college. He did great in school, he did great in college, he had a bright future ahead of him, but he had a few jobs that he wasn't really into and that didn't really work out, and he kind of slowly dropped out of his life, and he wasn't really interested in what he was doing. And then he kind of got a little bit of a bad reputation, and he got embarrassed, and meanwhile his other friends were catching up to him, were passing by him, and pretty soon he got self-conscious about being unsuccessful and not having started anything. And every time he tried to get back on track, he was full of ideas about, oh, I'll be fine, I have so much going for me, all I have to do is put my resume out there and find something to get started in. But he got kind of caught in the loftiness of it. It'll be fine, I don't really have to worry about it. He was trying to avoid feeling bad about himself, and as a result he got caught in the, oh, it'll be fine, life will take care of me, I'll see something for myself, I'll find an opportunity. And he wouldn't look past that. I personally find that's really common in a principals community. People just kind of get into, it'll be fine, mind will take care of things, and they don't think about things. That's one of the misunderstandings I find in my clients. When they see this, they're like, oh, good, I don't have to worry about it. Well, that's a form of disconnection. And I saw that for myself when I got into I want to make changes in my life. I got full of that, and it disconnected me from the reality of, is this realistic? And what is it that I have to do? And how much work is it going to take? And how much strategy do I have to do here, and how much pressure am I going to have to put on my kids, or how much am I going to have to kind of step out of my own comfort zone in doing that. And sometimes I think our lofty ideals are kind of an artificial protector for us of that, and it keeps us from being in life and seeing what's necessary. And so I saw that in myself. I saw that in my own life. And rather than judging myself for it, I found myself interested in it. And I saw that I flipped back and forth between that and getting really, really deep into the how-tos and kind of losing the bigger inspiration of what we're trying to do, because we're not trying to accomplish a checklist strategy. That's just part of a bigger picture of trying to create change in my life. And I found myself getting lost in one area or the other. And it was frustrating because neither one in and of itself was particularly productive. But what I realized, and this was actually something I kind of already knew in other areas of my life when I kind of reflected on this and thought about kind of what I saw, I thought, isn't that funny? I wrote down, this is, the insight that I had, and I realized I already knew that. I already do this in other areas of my life. This is one of the things I love about the principles, and I'm sure you guys will see this for yourself too, that what I saw is that I already knew within myself how to get out from under a feeling of lofty ideals. I already knew within myself how to get out from under the attachment I would have to, we have to use this strategy and we have to see it through. Because I would get, I would do these checklists, and I'd get mad at the kids if they didn't, get their checklist done, or if my husband didn't, have them do the checklist. And I would get overly focused on the importance of the strategy that I was going with in order to make this change, translate this kind of lofty ideal into a reality. Well, I realized that the only problem is that I got lost in one or the other of those experiences. And I realized that if I looked within myself, if I looked beneath whatever thinking that I had about it, I knew whether the ideal was too lofty or whether it was just right. I knew whether I should stick with that strategy in the moment, whether I should hold my kids to those standards in this particular moment, on this particular morning, or whether I was just overly attached to the strategy, thinking it was, the golden key to making my life the way that I wanted it to be. Because that's really what it is. When we get an inspiration or an idea about life, about how we want life to be, we get a vision of what our life could be. So all of a sudden I was like, wow, I want a life where I can, walk in and my house can be relatively clean because everybody's been helping, and where all I have to do is, sweep up in the evenings instead of spend, a half an hour picking up. I had an idea of what I wanted my life to be. Now, that's fine. It's great. I mean, that's natural. That's what happens as we have an inspiration. We have an insight about, I want to change. Maybe I want to lose weight, or maybe I want to just eat healthier, or maybe I want to put more of myself into my business, or maybe I want to get my, household straight for so my kids are helping, whatever it is that we have an inspiration or an insight about, it naturally creates a vision within ourselves of what our life could be. But the vision is just peripheral to that. It's just a byproduct of that. The inspiration itself is coming from our potential to have inspiration. It's coming from kind of that universal and transcendent force of change that's everywhere. That's not ours. We glimpsed it, we touched it, we brought it forward, we shared in it. But it's universal, it's transcendent, it's beyond us. It's what grows the trees and makes the rivers flow and turns water into ice and then into oceans and then into tears and whatever. It's the universal force of change that we happen to be a part of. And that's going to manifest in a lot of different ways. And I realized for the first time in the context of change, like I said, I've realized this in other areas of my life, but I realized that's what I'm looking to connect to when I seek a change in my life. I'm looking to connect to that universal feeling of change. And I thought what that looked like was the inspiration and the original insight and the feeling. And it does look like that, but it so quickly gets kind of turned into some sort of form in our own mind, like a vision of walking into a clean house. Now, that's great. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that thought, but that thought is not the inspiration. That thought was born of the inspiration. That's not the force of change. That's just a product of the force of change. Universal force of change. And the strategies are a product of the universal force of change. And so I found myself reflecting on what the universal force of change is, how it works in my life, how it works in your life, and what there is to know about it. And I realized that it comes in a feeling. It comes in a feeling of knowing what's right for myself, of knowing what's right for my kids, of knowing what's right for my health, if that's the direction that I want to go, of knowing what's right for my business, if that's the direction I want to go, and knowing what's right for a relationship, if I feel the need to bring change into a relationship. There's a sense of knowing within us, that represents the it represents that formless universal force of change, but it represents it in a form that is unique to us, because we can't really see the formless. This is why it's called formless. And this is why it's so hard to talk about it and so hard to see it, and why it seems irrelevant in our life. But when you start to see that what's formless is the feeling, and the thoughts are how they're formed, how it's formed. And you can see it in some thoughts, and you can see the absence of it in some thoughts. So the original inspiration I had to create a checklist was full of that feeling. It was inspired. It was totally connected to what was going on. I wasn't putting things on the checklist that were beyond my kids' capabilities. Okay. It was more of a pure form of that feeling. It showed up in kind of the original inspiration when I took my pen and jotted down a list of the checklists that I thought we ought to do for the kids. But one morning when everybody had gotten up late and everybody was a little bit grumpy and we had to get to school a little bit early, and I was taking this, inspired piece of form that I created in the form of a checklist and, forcing it down everybody's throat, the feeling was gone. The feeling was gone. There was no feeling in it. It took the same form. It looked the same. It looked great. But the feeling was gone. And I realized it's a moment-to-moment thing. You gotta check in with yourself. And when you check in with yourself, remember Sid in some of his recordings says seeing and seeing. There's knowing and knowing. If you look, we all know. I had this client the other day who had a really challenging relationship with her dad. Her dad was really judgmental of her and always had ideas about how she should be better. And he always said, I love you. I'm just doing this to, to help you. I just want you to be successful. But, it's common. They had a really challenging dynamic, and she often felt bad about herself around her dad. And so she came out here for our 4-day intensive, and we spent 4 days kind of helping her to get out from under, her thinking about him. And I did a follow-up call with her the other day, and she had the most interesting story. She said, after years and years and years of my dad criticizing me, she said, I realized that he really was just trying to help. This is what he said. I never believed him, but I see it now. And they had this conversation where he said, and she had 3 young kids as well, and he said to her, oh, I had this great idea for you. I was thinking we'd call all of our family and have them all come over to your house for a day and help you clean up. And it was so sweet because I could tell it was such a nice idea, and I could see how she could take it as judgmental, but I could also see how it was really, really thoughtful. Well, miraculously, she saw past whatever judgment she used to hear, and she realized he was trying to help. But she also saw that she heard the judgment in it. She heard that it was real. She heard, he thinks my house is a mess. She heard my house is a mess. And she felt overwhelmed for the first time. She didn't blame her dad, but she felt overwhelmed by a feeling of feeling bad about herself for her house being a mess, such that her dad would make this suggestion. And she felt her head flooded with, well, what do other people think? And is it really true? And is it really a problem? And she was overwhelmed by all of this thinking. But for the first time in the presence of her dad, that thinking hung out up here. It affected her, but it hung out up here. And she dropped down into what she knew. And she had a moment where she realized my house is a mess, but it's just the way that it is right now. It's just a function of the fact that I've got 3 kids and a couple of jobs and just flat out don't have the time to clean it. And at one point in my life, I did have time to clean it. And at some point in the future, I will. And as a matter of fact, I'm already making progress. He wouldn't see it. I can barely see it, but I'm moving in that direction. And she had a moment of clarity where she saw what was real amidst a barrage of other thinking that would generally derail her such that she lost confidence in herself, such that she felt bad about her dad, such that she said things that she didn't mean. Normally, all of that would just take her down. But she had the ability to step out from underneath it and know what was true, even in its imperfect nature. She knew that her house was too messy, but that was okay with her. She knew that she didn't need help, even though in the very moment before that and all the way up until that, one of her insecurities was, maybe I need more help in my life. Maybe I'm not doing good enough. Maybe other people have this figured out and I need someone to clean my house or tell me what's wrong with me or take care of my kids or whatever it is that her insecurity was feeding her. She was able to step underneath it and to know what was true about it and to be okay with that, to be okay in that knowing, which is one of the qualities of that knowing. When we get to that level of knowing, when we can step out from underneath ourselves, which we can all do, every single person on this earth has the ability to step out from underneath their thinking, whatever their thinking is, whatever their thinking is. Now, we don't always, just to be clear, we don't always have that ability in every single moment. Actually, technically we do. We don't always see that we have that ability. And I don't want to, put any lofty ideas into anybody's head that I can do that at any given moment in my life or that you can do that at any given moment in your life. We have the ability to do that at any given moment, but sometimes we just can't see enough to do that, which is something else, by the way, that I learned in the process of this, is that sometimes I just can't see what I need to see. Sometimes I just can't. Sometimes I have to be lost in my lofty ideals and be disconnected from what's realistic in the moment. Sometimes I have to force my agenda with my kids. I mean, I don't technically have to, but if I can't help it, I can't help it. And that the ideas aren't at fault. The strategies aren't at fault, and the kids aren't at fault. And I'm not even at fault. It's just a function of what happens. It's just a function of thought and consciousness and mind. Mind is creating it all anyway. But as we see that and as we get some distance from it, we can look for that knowing within ourselves. And we can have the perspective and the neutrality and the clarity. And we can be connected to that force of change that grounds us and that reconnects us to why we were doing this to begin with. And that helps us clear our heads so that whatever new thinking or inspiration is due, there's almost always new thinking and inspiration that is due in our life because we can refresh. Computers used to, Bonnie, you're a computer person, there's a refresh button. And one of the innovations in technology is that they built refresh into the system. So it used to be that you had to click refresh to refresh systems. And sometimes you still do in some programs, but for the most part, they started to realize, hey, life is happening so quickly that we better build refresh in every few seconds or every few milliseconds or however much these computer people have figured out makes sense, so that refresh is naturally occurring on our computer systems. Well, that's what I started to realize in my kind of initiatives to make changes in my life, that not only could I refresh whenever I wanted to, the more often I refresh, the better. The more often I come back to feel the inspiration for that force of change, that universal force of change, the better off I was. And that's particularly true when I get when I feel myself getting attached, when I feel that disconnection, which I can tell because I get intense, I get frustrated, I get feeling like I gotta push things through, pressure, guilt, all of those things are just product of me being disconnected from that universal force of change, clarity, and mind. Now, for me, the biggest red flag that helped me ultimately to remember that I've just lost connection to that was the thought and really the feeling of it's all on me. It's all on me. It was so isolating and hard, that it's all on me feeling. And I battled with it for a while, trying to get it, on somebody else. Would you help me? And how come you're not helping me? And at one point I realized it can't be all on me if there's mind. And that woke me up. Woke me up to my thinking. Woke me up to the fact that I was living in a world isolated with my thinking. It was just me and my thinking. And my thinking wasn't particularly good companions in that moment either. It was awful. And as soon as I really saw this logic of this universal force of change and this power, the wisdom that I had within me, and the fact that life was helping me along, you know? So for me, I realized it's in the cards for my kids to help in the house. It looks like I'm working against a force, but I'm not. I can't be, because universally, people want to help. People do. And those kids are people, and they're no different than anybody else. They're just lost in their own thought systems, but they don't want to be. They want to help. And then I could see evidence of that. As soon as I thought that, I thought, oh, that's true. I see it. I see my kids wanting to help. I see it doing something for them to help. I see that when they get out of themselves, they naturally offer to help, just like everybody else in the world. So once I started looking, I saw the universality of it. I saw the truth of it. And the more I saw the truth of it, the less I could believe that it's all on me. And it was a saving force. It saved me. It was so much better to not live in a world of it's all on me. And it was so easy to believe once I saw this kind of force of change that was already built into life. And once I saw how easy it was to access it just by looking to see what I know, like my client who looked to see, oh, I know there's nothing wrong with me in the way that I'm living my life, even though my dad thinks there's something wrong with me, even though I'm sure my friends think there's something wrong with me, even though I think there's something wrong with me. I know she knew there was nothing wrong with her. And that's all we need to know, is that there's somewhere else to look within ourselves that will connect us, and instantly that connection will make adjustments. It will make adjustments. You don't even have to make the adjustments. It will make adjustments for you. So I know we started a little late, so I don't know if we'll go a little bit late. Bonnie, will we go a little bit later? Okay. And I don't know if anybody's on the call, because I know we switched where there are people. I know we switched links. So I'll pause here and see if anybody has questions, if anybody has comments, if anybody's noticed this for themselves. the other thing I love about this is it happens in the moment. It's not, I think we think about change, again, our lofty ideals, we think about change as if it's something we do and then we get a platform and then we stick with the platform, but it happens moment to moment. There's a moment when we get inspired to change, and then the next moment that either carries through or it fizzles out, and then it comes back and it gets weaker and it gets stronger, but it all is happening in the moment. So if any of you guys have, an example of kind of how you've related to change in a way that works out, and in a way that's served you, and in a way that's connected you to that universal change force, as I call it. All right, so this question came in. Yay, questions. How can we digest the fact that it is an effortless effort? Well, I mean, I don't know that we can digest it. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by digest. I'm wondering if kind of digesting it is more of an intellectual term, and that how can we make sense of it? I don't know. I think the only way we really can make sense of it is to kind of experience it firsthand, and to realize, like if you've ever had a hobby that really came natural to you and that you really enjoyed doing, and that if you get stuck when you're doing your hobby, if you get stuck not being able to do something, like if you're a skier and you find yourself on a slope that's too hard for you, you have a moment of panic, or a moment of this is hard, a moment of wish I hadn't I come on this slope, and then you just find that connection within yourself of the enjoyment and of the love for it, and the challenge becomes, I don't know, fun or interesting, or something to kind of rally behind. And it's not literally effortless, but you don't experience effort in it. It does not feel effortful. And we've all had moments like that. If any of you guys have had kids, and you're dealing with some of the things that kids throw at you, and you have a friend who doesn't have kids, and she's like, wow, how did you do that? You're like, I don't know, we just figured it out. You figure things out. Effort doesn't really factor in, and that's part of the beauty of kind of the universal nature of this. It's got a lot of neutrality in it. That's what I love about this. The universalness takes the me part out of it, and it makes everything kind of matter of fact and straightforward and objective. And that's what's possible. That's what's possible within us if we look beneath our thinking. So good question, actually, really good question. Really good. Any other questions? Anything else people are grappling with? So a wish that comes back, so a wish that comes back and back may just be an indicator of a change that would like to manifest. Yes. I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that kind of universal force of change comes in different forms. Sometimes it comes, like for me, it came on like gangbusters, just like an enormous realization. I have to make this change. I have to do it, and I have to do it right now, and I know just how to do it. It came just enormously. But I do think a lot of times it comes in a different form, kind of a quiet knock on the door. And again, there's no way to know how to handle these things. Like sometimes people feel like, these enormous, overwhelming desires to change should be, approached with a little bit of caution, because maybe there's a little bit too much loftiness in there and I don't want to get in over my head. And we have to figure that out for ourselves. And the same thing with the quiet knocking of a wish that comes back. We just have to keep looking within ourselves, looking for that feeling of knowing, to know, do I listen harder because it's knocking softer? Or is it knocking softer because it's just it doesn't need to come in right now? You know, it's definitely, it's not definitely, it's likely coming from, somewhere. And you just have to keep looking and see, at some point it will make sense to you. And in the meantime, yeah, you just have to do the best you can if it's not clear what to do. Let's see. I found one of the biggest causes of confusion is when we think we should change in a certain way, but find we are not doing so. Like in my business, I thought I should be more focused and should delegate more, and I couldn't do it until it happened. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is that it's mysterious, this universal force of change. The thing is that we understand ourselves really well, and our ways of going about things really well, and our patterns really well, and our history really well. We know ourselves, inside and out, and that's great. But when we're looking at something like mind, when we're looking at something like this kind of universal force of change, we don't understand that. It's beyond us, thank goodness. It's beyond us, just like we don't really understand what's happening in nature. I mean, we can understand some of it. We can become a natural scientist and understand genetics or, environmental influences. We can see what nature's doing. We can make more sense out of it. But there's a beautiful mystery to that. And that's really apparent if you look back in your life at some of the things that have happened to you that at the time you thought this is a disaster and it turned out great, or at the time you thought this is fantastic. And then later you were like, oh my gosh, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. We don't know. We don't know what change has in store. We don't know what life has in store. That's one of the best things about stepping out of the it's all on me mindset, to realizing it's not all on me. It's on me in partnership with this, mysterious, beautiful, and transcendently intelligent force that's working through me and with me and in partnership with me. We don't know what it's all about. All we can do is the best we can to partner with it. And then it's going to play out how it's going to play out. And if we can have the patience to allow that, it works out great. It works out absolutely fantastically. To just be a part of it, to be essentially the acting agent of that, and to see what happens. And your story was a perfect example of it. It was a perfect example of it. You thought you needed to make the change. You got on yourself. I should be making the change. I should be making the change. You didn't make the change. And then all of a sudden you thought, hey, I'm going to make the change. And then it worked out. This is how life works. It's just, if we could get out of the way, it works a lot better. All right. Can you talk about this experience? I'm not sure if that's related to this here. I noticed that 3Ps has made a big difference in my life in areas where I haven't even tried to make changes. Yes. Yet in the area that I really want to change, my anxiety or health, I stay stuck. Yeah. Well, in a sense, Francesca, that's just a function of ego. That's just a function of us being disconnected from the universal nature of it and thinking that we know what needs to change. Now, I don't know, maybe we do. I'm not saying you don't know, and I'm not saying I don't know, but if there's a feeling of attachment to it, if there's a feeling of need to it, if there's a feeling of frustration or pressure or guilt, then we're in here with that whole head full of thoughts like my client and her dad. Okay. And like I said, we all have the ability to drop down into a deeper connection with kind of the knowing that we have within ourselves. But sometimes we just can't see it. Sometimes we're just so kind of overwhelmed by our thinking that that's not true. And I know, I've been there. We get thinking, oh, that's not true. There's no universal force of change. I mean, I'm sure there is a universal force of change, but it's not helping me right now. And it's telling me to do this, and that can't be. I mean, we just get lost in the illusion that it works a different way, that we're the one in charge and that we're the one who knows. We don't know. We don't know what change we need to make. If we know and we can make it, then good. We're in concert with with that deeper intelligence. But sometimes we just don't know. And we gotta let that be okay. And like the woman who wrote in and said, I thought I had to make this change, and I tried to make this change, and I couldn't make this change, and then I just made it. If you look back in your life, you will see that that's happened to you over and over and over again. You thought you needed to make a change, and you did make a change, and you couldn't make a change, and you couldn't make a change, and then at some point, either you made the change, or your life changed such that it wasn't required, or you got over it. And that, I mean, there's some things we hang on to for a lifetime, and that never happens with those. But if you look in other areas of your life, to your point, that other areas the principles have already helped, it's already happening. And if you feel like you need to make the change and push it through, you're just caught up in your own ego about it. Me too. Me too. I find this really frustrating because I feel like I should know better. I know, I'm sorry you feel that way. It sucks. I get it. But that's okay. You'll get over it. It's not true. You shouldn't know better. I mean, that's the great thing about consciousness, consciousness thing. And the principles are mind, thought, and consciousness. And everybody talks about thought, and we all talk about mind and this amazing power. Well, I love consciousness. Consciousness makes our thinking real. Thank goodness. I love having real thinking when I'm seeing Star Wars and living in the world, and when I'm, really in love with my family or my beautiful town that I live in, and that fills me up, and consciousness is making that all real. And then, I get feeling, bad about myself for something stupid, and consciousness makes that real too. It's like, oh, this is what we're, illuminating now. Great. Illuminate that. Guilt. Good. I like that. Consciousness is indiscriminate. It just makes everything real. And we've just got to live with that. And we got to embrace it as a part of what is, and be forgiving of the experiences that we can't see past, when we can't step out from under our thinking. That's one of the things I loved about my insight and my realization about change, is that it just, it didn't vilify my thoughts. There's nothing wrong with your thinking. There's nothing wrong with feeling frustrated or feeling bad about yourself. It's just what we do, and you can get out from under it, whether you can do it right now or whether you do it in 5 minutes when you get distracted because you got hungry. You'll gain some distance and it will go away, and then it will be as if it never happened. Really, it'll be as if it never happened. It doesn't even matter if you got frustrated with yourself, or if you did the wrong thing, or if you should have changed and you didn't. It doesn't matter, because you got a whole nother minute that's about to happen that is a totally clean slate. So I got lost with timing in terms of when we started, but I should probably wrap up. Yeah, Bonnie?
There's one more question if you'd like to take it. If you have the time.
I do. How can addicts be helped through the understanding of the 3 principles? Well, I hope this isn't too simplistic of an answer, but really the same as anybody else that can be helped through an understanding of the principles. I mean, human beings are the same. That is the message of the principles. That is a pillar of this. All human beings work exactly the same way. We are all experiencing a product of our thinking and consciousness bringing our thinking to life, and mind as the source of thought and consciousness. We are all living in an experience using the principles. And we all have the ability to understand that. And we all have the ability to forget that we understand that. Every single person on this earth. And you take any person, a 5-year-old or a 80-year-old or an addict or a person who struggles with anger or an anorexic person, you take just a regular person walking down the street, you take any of those people and you help them to glimpse the fact that that is what's happening. They have the potential to gain insight into that, and that insight, like that universal force of change that I talked about that manifests in perfect form for me, it will manifest in perfect form to them. They might see I drink because I'm unhappy, or they might see drinking really protects me from this, or they might see that drinking hurts other people and so I have to stop. Or they might see this is a bunch of BS and I'm not gonna see anything at all. But in answer to the second question, they have to see it for themselves. They definitely have to see it for themselves. But seeing sounds like the bad news. The good news is they're so much more capable of seeing it than we think. Really, really, believe me. And all you have to do is listen to Bill Pettit, Kathy Casey, listen to anybody that's working with people that you'd think it would be harder for them to get. It's not the case. We have no idea who's going to get this, what they're going to see, when they're going to see it, what it's going to take them to see it. So yes, absolutely, they have to see it for themselves, but that doesn't really matter because they can and they want to. Every person on earth, despite what they think, despite what they act like, wants to see this and has the ability to. Good questions. Oh, gives me so much hope. I know it gives me so much hope too. So hopeful, so excited. I'll wrap up now. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for coming and listening. Thank you for asking questions. Love questions. If you guys like what you hear from me, we're putting a big push in 2016 here at Pransky and Associates. My sister and Erica Bugby, my George and Linda, my parents, and I are putting a big push to get out more content in 2016. So if you like what you hear from any of the four of us, get on our email list. If you go to our website, pranskynassociates.com, put your name and email in there, and we're going to send out videos, blogs, podcasts, lots of different things that we're doing. And we also have, as Bonnie mentioned at the beginning, an online course called Insight. So it's something that we dreamed up about a couple of years ago. It's a comprehensive course on the principles, 100% online. You can do it on your own time. It's 100% downloadable too, so you can have it all. You can download it all on your computer, and it's like almost 12 hours of content. It features a lot of the main teachers and the principles with Kathy Casey and Dick and Bettinger and Bill Pettit and all of those people. So it's awesome, and I think you should check it out if you like kind of my style of delivery and Erica's and George and Linda's. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Bonnie, for hosting this.
Kara, thank you so much. I feel like I could have just spent the whole hour talking with you one-on-one because I related so much to everything you were saying, and I think other people probably did as well. And thank you, everybody who found us on the new link. We had a little technical gremlin who, right after we started the broadcast live on the original links, kicked us off and recorded about 30 seconds. So we had to start again. So I'm really pleased that, as how many of you found us live again. Yeah, so that was great. Really great talk, Kara. Thank you. And I want to let you know that in 2016, we're going to start to have 2 webinars a month. So the next webinar is on Tuesday, January 26th at noon with Judy Sedgman.
So that topic looked really good too.
Yeah.
What's the name of it? Where do you start?
It's Where Do I Start? Yeah.
It's such a common question with the principals. I'm so glad. I'm going to tune in for that one.
Yeah. Oh, great. And then the other thing I just want to bring to everyone's attention, in case you haven't been seeing the emails, is that the 3PGC does have a conference, and our conference this year is in October. It's Thursday, October 27th through Sunday, October 30th. It's in the Los Angeles area. Registration has not opened yet. It will soon. They're still working on hotel pricing. But I hope to meet a lot of you there. That would be great fun. And
it's a great conference if you guys have a chance to go. It's really fun to get together with a lot of people who are learning this, not just to form connections, but it's kind of like a concert. You get together, there gets to be a collective level of consciousness and a feeling, and you just kind of float around in it for a couple of days. It's really fun.
Yeah, absolutely is. It's been I've been to 2 of them, and it's been a wonderful experience for me. So hopefully, well, I look forward to seeing you there, Kara, and hopefully I'll meet a lot more people there again this year. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining, and I hope everyone who listens to the recording enjoys it as well. See you next time.